So this year's draft class kind of seems like it's all over the place, and opinions on players are very varying from scout to scout. But these are some guys that I would try to avoid. So I think it can go without saying that if one of these guys starts to fall way past the range where they're expected to be drafted, then I would not have a problem with the team drafting one of these guys. However, if I was a team drafting in a spot where these guys are expected to go, basically I would try to avoid them because I just really don't like them for where they're ranked. The first of these players is Conor Geekie. Now, I did have him in my safe draft picks video because I think he has a relatively decent floor. And I still think that is mostly true, but like I said in that video, his skating is an issue. And he also doesn't play with a lot of pace. And what I mean by that is he can't really control the puck and make plays when he is skating at his maximum speed. And his maximum speed isn't even that high. So you combine that with his poor skating, and that makes his game honestly not that projectable. So I do have questions about how well his game will project to the National Hockey League. But really, I just think that that is significantly going to limit his upside. At best, I think he's going to be a really solid bottom six contributor, and there is nothing wrong with that. If you draft a guy that becomes a solid bottom six contributor, generally speaking, that would be considered a success. Unless you draft them in the first half of the first round, then you might be looking at a pick that is kind of disappointing if that is all they become. And that is generally where Geeky is ranked. It is pretty much expected that he's going to go top 15, maybe even top 10. And for that high of a pick in this year's draft, I really strongly disagree. I think I would start to become more comfortable drafting Geeky in like the mid 20s. If you're getting him, say, 24 or later, at that point, I think it's a pretty good pick. But anything before that, I just think there's too much upside left on the table. The next player I want to talk about is Maverick Lamoureux. So, Lamoureux doesn't really do anything that excites me, to be honest. His skating, I think, is again an issue. I don't really see that much skill out of him or hockey IQ or anything really that scouts look for. I mean, he's not terrible, and he's not ranked that highly either. He is 20th among North American skaters on the NHL.com list, at least. But basically, he's 6'7". That is the big selling point for him, I think. And anytime size is a player's best asset, I just don't think that's a good draft pick. This can be applied a little bit to Conor Geekie as well, because Geekie is 6'4", so size is projectable, so that does help Geekie out a little bit there. But Geeky does other things as well. Like I said, I'm not that high on him. I don't think his upside is very high, but he still has enough skills that his size isn't the only thing he has going for him. With Lamoureux, I feel like his size is basically the only thing he has going for him. So if you want a giant defenseman, sure, I guess, but I would not really draft this guy in the top two rounds for sure. I wouldn't touch him. The third player I want to talk about is another defenseman in Hudson Thornton. Now, Thornton significantly jumped up consolidated rankings from about 211 overall amongst North American skaters to 109. And I don't really see it, to be honest. I watched him play a decent amount this season, and I just don't really see anything from him, to be honest. I mean, 100 being 109th overall amongst North American skaters, that's probably putting him in like the late fourth round at best. But even then, I mean, you want to take a flyer on him in the sixth or seventh round, sure, I guess, and I suspect that is kind of where he's gonna go. But anything above that, I really wouldn't draft him in the fifth round. I certainly wouldn't draft him in the fourth round. And yeah, that's about it with Hudson Thornton. It's pretty simple. I just don't really see what some people do. The final individual player that I want to talk about is Jordan Dumais. So Dumais, I believe, uh, it led the Quebec Major Junior Hockey League amongst draft eligible players, and there is something to be said for that. You know, production is usually a good indicator of future progression. However, the Quebec Major Junior Hockey League is not a league that is known to play defense, like, at all. It's also a league that is not known for great goaltending, probably because they don't really play defense, but still, the goaltending isn't great. And Dumais scored a lot of points, but again, I don't really think he did anything that fantastic to score most of his points. Like, he wasn't creating these insanely skilled passes into high danger areas or sniping pucks from high danger areas. It was just a lot of, you know, pretty basic stuff, and the puck found its way into the back of the net. So I'm not that impressed by him at all. Is he draftable? Absolutely. He will get drafted, and probably in the second round, I'm guessing. But I personally probably wouldn't take him until maybe tail end of the second round, maybe in the third round. I feel like a third round pick would be pretty good value on a guy like Dumais because he does have some skill. Obviously, you don't just score 109 points willy nilly. I mean, you can't. You can score a few points willy nilly in that league, but yeah, I mean, he definitely has some skill there, and there's things that you could work on. I mean, with any prospect, there's always a chance that they can exceed expectations, but for me, my expectations for Dumais are pretty low, so I wouldn't really be excited about drafting him. Finally, I want to have a very short discussion about goalies, because basically there are no goalies in this draft. I would not draft a goaltender who isn't named Tyler Brennan. And I'm not really that high on Tyler Brennan either. Granted, I don't really scout goaltenders, but I did see Tyler Brennan play, and I can say this. He is a very good junior goaltender. Now, there are lots of very good junior goaltenders that don't get drafted and never make the NHL, and that's for a reason. Goaltending in junior hockey is extremely different than goaltending in the NHL. So there's plenty of goaltenders that put up good numbers, but they don't really have the fundamentals or the athleticism or the size to succeed at higher levels. Brennan, I think, potentially does. I still think he's kind of a long shot to become a significant contributor at the NHL level, but you never know. He is good enough to be worth a draft pick, I think, but any other goaltender is pretty questionable. I mean, I'm sure there will be goaltenders drafted in the late rounds, and it is pretty common for goalies drafted in, say, the 6th or 7th round to go on and become very good starters at the NHL level, or at least, even an average starter at the NHL level is great value for a pick that low. But goaltending is voodoo. You can have a great process and scout perfectly based off your models and your process, and then they never work out. And then some other team was had 4 7th round picks, and they're like, why not? Let's throw one at this random goalie guy, and then he becomes like the next Vasilevsky or something. You never know with goalies. Okay, guys, that will be it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. If you did like it, please do give it a like. That really helps me out. And I've got a couple other videos that are starting to form kind of a series on my opinions on the 2022 draft class. So I'll leave one of those on the screen for you to click on. If you do so choose, I would greatly appreciate it. I'm sure it's a nice video. And that being said, have a nice day.